Hey guys, Deborah here, back with another video. So today I wanted to post a video following up on the winter snowstorm video that I posted about the unprecedented snowfall and winter blast that we had here in Texas. On Monday, when the snow started, I filmed a video, and at that time it seemed like it was going to be a fun snow day, something historic, but it very quickly went downhill. So I want to share my experience with you guys, what it was like being without power, heat, internet, and just basic utilities, even without water at one point for the last several days, how I managed it, what choices I made that helped me to survive, and my tips for you if you're ever in that situation. But I hope that you never will be, because it was absolutely terrible. So basically, we got notified here in Houston that we're going to get a snowstorm, but most of us have never been through a snowstorm. I know that I have never been through snow that didn't melt as soon as it hit the ground here in Houston. I did live in DC for a year, so I have been through snowfall, but I have certainly never been through a snowstorm where I did not have power. I also saw lots of comments saying, well, why didn't Texans prepare? But we did prepare, guys. These are the lines at the grocery stores before the storm. People bought tons of food and hardware to try to prep their homes. But there were so many challenges that we faced with this weather event that it was really overwhelming. So I know the news kept saying that there were rolling blackouts, but actually there were outages. So let me tell you guys what happened from my perspective. So on Sunday night, the temperature started to drop and people were told to be off of the roads. So overnight from Sunday to Monday, many people did lose power. Now I did not lose power, and when I filmed the video on Monday, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I thought that things would be fine. I edited that video and posted it. A little later on that day, on Monday, about 1 p.m., I lost power, and the temperature in my apartment started dropping really fast. By the time it started to get dark outside, about 6 o'clock, I had to light some candles. It was quite chilly. I layered up, and I thought that I would be okay, just me and my dog spending the night here in my apartment. I thought I was prepped. If you guys have seen my hurricane prep video, I do know how to prep for storms. I did have food for this. I did not have a generator because I live in an apartment complex, and of course I also couldn't use a grill or anything like that indoors to stay warm, and I don't have a fireplace. But I thought that I would be okay to make it through the night by layering up and getting under blankets. But guys, let me tell you, I have never been so cold in my life. Okay guys, you probably can't see me. I'm gonna do a creepy flashlight thing. It is 8:41 p.m. on Monday, February 15th. And what started out as like a really fun snow day got real really quick. I ended up losing power around 1 p.m. and I just could not believe how fast my apartment got really cold. So first it was fine during the day. I felt kind of calm about it. I just thought the power probably would come back on, but it didn't. So then about 5 o'clock, I ventured out to try to find some warm food and see what was what, because the roads were kind of clear. The snow had either melted or been cleared out. But unfortunately, the power was out like all around. So most places were closed, grocery stores, restaurants and stuff. And the few that were open or had power or whatever, the line was like crazy long. So I came on back home to start getting ready because it was starting to get dark. So I kind of warmed up as much as I could in my car, walked my dog before it got dark because it's just super dark to be outside without any power. But the main thing is just I'm cold. So I have on a hat, of course, scarf. Let's see if you can see. I have on a scarf, a hoodie, real gloves now. I had to find my real gloves. I have on several layers under the hoodie. I have on my pants, socks, and like these really thick socks from Costco, like super thick. And I'm under 3 blankets, and I am still cold. I'm still cold. So I'm just trying to be still and get comfortable as much as possible.
Probably want to watch a movie. I have an extra battery charger pack. I was trying to conserve power, but I can always go to my car and charge my phone, but it's not that safe. I don't feel like, because there's no security. I didn't see the security people outside tonight, and there's no lights on anywhere, so I just don't think it's super safe to sit in my car. But I'm also bored, so I'm gonna try to watch a movie or something. Have my candles going. I have stuff to drink. Of course, this pretty much sucks because a lot of my food is gonna go bad. I had tried putting it outside, but it's like I live in an apartment, so it would just be on the porch, kind of not being watched, which is weird. So that sucks. I wasted money on food. Um, this whole thing sucks. And they're saying this could be days. So I'll check in with you guys in the morning. Just wanted to update you on how my snow day turned into a wintry nightmare.
So the temperature outside was about 15 degrees, and there was also a wind chill. And with no heat in my home, I was extremely cold, even layered up, even under blankets. And I couldn't even really sleep well. It was like a very restless sleep overnight because I was so chilly and so uncomfortable. And I also kept worrying about trying to also make sure that I was keeping my dog warm. So we made it through the night very uncomfortably by candlelight, very cold. And the next morning, which was Tuesday morning, I was like, we have to warm up. So we hopped in the car and I turned on the heater and let the heater run until we were, were getting warm, and it felt like our body temperatures had returned to normal. The dog was even shivering when we first got in the car because, of course, he had to walk outside to the car. I do want to note, guys, that if you do ever use your car to stay warm, make sure that it's in an open area because you don't want to run the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Over 600 people here in the Houston area did go to the hospital for carbon monoxide poisoning. So never use your car or anything that produces like fumes in an enclosed area. So I realized because I needed my car to stay warm, to charge up my devices and stuff like that, that I probably needed to get some gas. So this was Tuesday morning. The roads were actually still icy because it had just snowed the day before, and overnight the snow had frozen into ice. But I decided to risk it because I knew that I needed gas. So I very carefully drove around the city. It took over an hour for me to finally find an open gas station, and the pump was running really slow. But thankfully I was able to fill up my car. So I knew, okay, I'm gonna have gas to run my vehicle. I'm gonna have transportation to get around. But I also knew that I could not spend another cold night in my apartment. So I decided to pack up, and I ended up going to my sister's house. Now my sister had lost power on Monday, but her power was in and out, unlike my power that never came back on. She also had gas to run her stove, and she never lost use of her water, and my water was already starting to lose water pressure. So I packed up my car with the dog and went over to spend the night at my sister's house. Things were much better over there. Even though the power was in and out, it at least gave us an opportunity to get warm and have warm food. But it was still very uncomfortable because it was like you would get warmed up and then it would get cold. And then you would get warmed up and then it would get cold. And so overnight it was like that. It was like a very restless feeling of not knowing how long the power was going to be out, and then when it came on, not knowing how long it was going to be on, and also worrying about my property not having anyone here, what was going to happen to it. So the next day was Wednesday, and I decided to go and check on my apartment. So I packed up, got my dog, drove back to Houston because my sister lives outside of Houston. Drove back into Houston, and while I was driving home, we got a boil water notice. So the city of Houston was now under a boil water advisory. Now I had enough water to drink to cover a storm, but I did not have enough water to actually use for all my water sources, and I wasn't able to boil water because I didn't have electricity. So I brought the dog home, and I immediately went back out to the store because I knew there was going to be a rush on water in Houston. We had a boil water advisory once before, and it was just, the water was sold out instantly. So I went to Randall's. Now, Randall's had lost power overnight, guys, and they still had not had their power restored. And almost all of Houston, it seemed like, didn't have power. Most businesses were closed, most gas stations were closed, some grocery stores were closed. But thankfully, this Randall's was open. So the Randall's was running on backup power. It was like a very apocalyptic experience. The shelves were bare of many items. There was no fresh items. So there was no meat available to purchase. There was no dairy. There was no produce, because the produce, some of it has to be kept cold, so they weren't selling any of it. There were no frozen items for sale. You couldn't buy eggs or milk or anything like that. So people were very frantic. The store was dark. They did have a lot of water at that time, and they did not have any limit on it. So some people were just filling up their whole cart with water. Now, I don't know how many people, people were buying water for, so I don't know if that's what they actually needed. I purchased 4 cases because I felt like that's what I needed. In hindsight, really, you kind of need more, because if you're going to use it for everything, for bathing, for drinking, and all hygienic purposes and cooking, you need a lot of water per person. Now, luckily for me, I never lost water completely, but it wasn't safe necessarily to use that water for all purposes, especially for drinking. So like I said, that was Wednesday. I was able to get some water, but I was hoping that my power would come back on. So I kind of hung out around my place that day thinking, okay, the power is going to come back on, because most people were saying the power was going in and out. But my power was not coming back on, and it was supposed to get cold again that night, Wednesday night, with a freezing rain. So I was like, okay, well, can't spend the night here. So I packed the dog back up, packed everything back up, went back to my sister's house. And at that time, her power was still going in and out, but thankfully this time it stayed on for most of the night. So we were able to eat. She actually made some gumbo. I was able to actually really warm up for the first time since Monday, and also get some rest. I was extremely exhausted. In fact, I was so tired that when I came home on Wednesday, I took a nap at my house, even though it was cold, because my body was just exhausted. But Wednesday night, I was able to actually get some sleep, warm up, get a hot meal, and I was just hoping and praying that my power would be on in my apartment the next day. Now, the next morning, which was Thursday morning, thankfully the power was starting to be restored throughout the city. So at one point, there were over 4 million households in Texas at a time that did not have power. Now, you have to remember, more than one person usually lives in a household. So there were anywhere between 15 million and 30 million people that did not have access to electricity and heat at any one time. And on top of that, we were having the water issues. Now, I never lost water completely in my home, but some people had zero water in their homes, either because of frozen pipes, water pressure issues, or other issues with the water infrastructure here in Houston and other cities around Texas. And of course, there were people that were going to the hospital for carbon monoxide poisoning and hypothermia. So it was just a crazy situation, on top of people trying to stay warm and accidentally starting fires, and people getting in accidents because of the icy roads. So I think when people look at the situation, they're thinking, well, why didn't you guys prep? Well, people in Texas did prep. We actually bought an unprecedented amount of food before the storm. But there's so many different things going on that it's hard to be prepared for every single scenario. And unless you've ever been in that scenario where you're freezing cold with no electricity and no heat, you don't realize how hard it is to even think. And it's not like you can just stay bundled up under blankets for 36 hours. One, you're not going to generate enough body heat that way anyway. But two, you're still going to have to get up and use the restroom, eat, try to find fuel, try to find resources, and take care of yourself, your family members, and your pets, especially if you have small children or elderly family members. So you have to think through all of those scenarios when you're prepping for a potential storm, not just what's going to happen in the best case scenario, but what might happen in the worst case scenario if you have to evacuate your home, or if one of your family members gets sick, if your pipes burst, if your house gets flooded, anything that could happen. I even heard of people whose roofs caved because of the pressure from the snow. So all of that was happening in the city of Houston and in the state of Texas. So it just felt like a lot of chaos, and it's just really scary. Even if for the people, I think, who maintain their power and their water, they still were watching this chaos taking place around them and kind of feeling helpless because they couldn't necessarily help their neighbors and family members and friends, even though people did allow people to come into their home and helped out as much as they could. So on Thursday, my power was restored and I was able to actually come back home, and I was just really exhausted. I was completely exhausted, really tired. That day I tried to go get a couple of groceries because everything that was in my fridge and freezer had not been kept at the right temperature, so it spoiled. But I only got a few things, and the grocery stores were pretty much wiped out anyway, so I couldn't get a lot. But I got really good sleep just being in my bed, just actually having heat and just feeling so much gratitude. And the next day was Friday, yesterday. I wanted to film yesterday, but I was honestly so exhausted. I just needed to rest. And I had spotty cell phone and internet throughout the whole time, so I didn't get a chance to take care of some business things. So I spent Friday trying to take care of business things on the phone, trying to get caught up on emails, and I was mostly just in the bed. And I felt really sick. I think it's from the constant temperature changes from being hot then cold and all of that, my body just not being used to it. So I was extremely exhausted. I spent most of yesterday resting. And when I woke up this morning, I really didn't feel that great either. So I tried to film this video this morning, and it was just incredibly long and rambly, and my thoughts weren't really coherent. So I decided I needed to get out of the house. I went down to Kima with my sister, just kind of soaked in a little bit of sun, ate at a restaurant, tried to relax my mind and just kind of de-stress from this whole situation. And I was able to come home now and film and kind of share my thoughts about what happened. But the disaster is not over. There are still people all over Texas who are suffering, especially people who had damage to their home, people who became ill. Unfortunately, there were at least 10 people who passed away from hypothermia during the storm, and many more who suffered from carbon monoxide poisoning and other issues throughout the storm. So I'm so grateful for healthcare workers, first responders, drivers, and people who were out there providing resources for us to just be able to survive this storm. Now, if you did have damage to your home, you may be eligible for individual assistance from FEMA. And there are also many organizations that are giving out food and water because we're still in the midst of the water crisis. As of right now, Houston is still under a boil water notice, and many cities in Texas are as well. Now, I won't get into the issues with the power grid because it's really not something I understand very well, but I do think there are issues that need to be fixed. And I think this was just all around failure on many levels regarding the preparation for the storm, from the officials who are responsible for public health and safety. And I do think on an individual level, we can all try to do more as well. I thought I was prepped very well, but just like hurricanes, which are all different, you never really know what it's going to be like until you are in the situation. So for most of us in Texas, we had never been in a freezing multiple day weather event, and certainly not without power or electricity. So next time we'll know how to prepare better. If you can get a generator, definitely get a generator, but do understand that you have to have a plan for different scenarios. You may not be able to just sit under blankets for multiple days. You have to have water sources for drinking, bathing. You need to have non-perishable foods. Of course, you should have blankets and proper winter gear. Things like down coats, gloves, long johns can help to keep you warm. You need to have a plan for your pets, your elderly, and your children, or anyone in your home that has any type of health issue or is a vulnerable person. And you definitely need to have gas in your car, because it turns out that your car is a really important source for heat, for charging your devices, and for evacuating an unsafe area if you need to. Also, be sure to save emergency numbers because you may not have access to the internet to look those up. And 911 is not necessarily the right number. You might have a different number like 311 in your area, or 211, or some other emergency number to help you with situations that are not life-threatening. So look all that information up ahead of time. Be prepared whether you have to stay in your home or if you need to evacuate it. Try to stay calm, and remember your priorities should be preserving life for yourself and the people around you. I know this sounds like a lot, and it was a lot. It was definitely one of the scariest experiences that I ever went through, but I'm grateful to have gotten through it. It was really uncomfortable. I pray that you guys never have to go through it, but if you do, hopefully something that I shared will be able to help you to survive and to thrive moving forward. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. I will be filming some more over the next couple of weeks, some videos about what's been going on with me, what's been going on with my career. I've been in a transition, so I'll be sharing more about that as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.